Midnight. A woman in a bath towel knocks on a stranger's door on the 41st floor. Her name is Delphine Whitmore, 29, black, a criminal defense attorney, founding partner of her own firm, and that morning, the reporters on the courthouse steps walked past her to ask the older partner the questions. Behind that door lives Kang Tae-jun, chairman of Miron Group. They call him the Quiet One. Black ink runs up the left side of his neck, a koi climbing from his collarbone to his jaw. 4 days earlier, she walked into his boardroom mid-presentation. She took apart his defense strategy in 4 minutes. She demanded every financial record, no limits. He signed. Then he said one thing: "When you decide, don't call, just knock on my door." Now the water is spreading across her floor. Her phone is dead. The valve will not turn. And in her apartment, one file box has already been opened by someone who was never supposed to be there. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a member and help our channel. Delphine Whitmore took the courthouse steps 2 at a time, and still arrived second. The microphones had already turned, 12 of them, a hedge of black foam, all angled at Arthur Pell, who had spent the entire hearing writing nothing on a legal pad while she dismantled a forensic accountant on cross for 91 minutes. Pell adjusted his cuff. He smiled the way men smile when they have been handed something they never asked for and have decided to keep it. "Mr. Pell, is this a total collapse of the government's case?" "I'd call it a good morning," Pell said. Delphine stopped 3 steps below him. Her scarlet blazer caught the light, the pencil skirt sharp at the knee, the oxblood briefcase heavy in her right hand, with 200 pages of the transcript she had built the morning out of. Nobody moved a microphone an inch. A reporter in a puffer coat glanced at her, then back to Pell. "Sir, the witness admitted the wire dates were reconstructed. Was that your strategy going in?" "We prepare," Pell said. Delphine felt the strap of the briefcase cut into her palm and let it. Her heels were nude patent, the pair she wore only for arguments she expected to win, and she had picked them at 6 that morning in the dark of a bedroom with no curtains. She stood there through 4 more questions. She counted them. Then she walked around the press line, close enough that the puffer coat had to step back for her, and she went down the rest of the steps without breaking stride. Yvette Kerrigan was waiting at the curb with the car door already open. "How many?" Yvette said. "How many what?" "How many questions did he take?" 6. Yvette pushed her tortoiseshell glasses further up into her honey-tipped curls, which is what she did instead of saying something she would have to apologize for. The dimple in her left cheek stayed flat. "The transcript's clean. I already pulled the section where the accountant walks it back. 40 seconds. It's a clip. Send it nowhere." "Delphine, send it nowhere, Yvette." She got in. "If I have to put my own cross on the internet, I've already lost the argument I'm actually having." The car pulled into traffic. Delphine opened the briefcase on her knees and read her own handwriting from the 2nd hour of the hearing, 3 words underlined twice. Who reconstructed them? She had asked it. The accountant had said a name, and then said he could not be certain, and Halloran's second chair had objected before the room could hold the silence, and the judge had sustained it, and the moment had died there on the record like a bird against glass. She underlined it a 3rd time. Whitmore and Associates had 11 employees, 6 of them under 30, and a lease on the 22nd floor that Delphine had signed at 26, with a signature she practiced on a napkin first. She had built it on white-collar work, money laundering, structuring, the long gray rooms where money changes its name. 4 years, 14 federal defendants, 11 walked. The office had a glass wall facing the elevators, and behind the glass, that afternoon, 3 associates stood up when she came through it. She waved them down. Novak, she said. The wire dates. I want every version of that spreadsheet the government produced, sorted by metadata, not by Bates number. They produced four. They told us about. She was still talking when the phone on Yvette's desk lit up, and Yvette said the name of the caller, and Delphine kept walking, because the name was Arthur Pell. She took it standing at the window with her back to the room. You were superb, Pell said. Genuinely. You took 6 questions. They asked me 6 questions. They asked you because you were standing where I argued. She watched a delivery truck fail to make a turn, 22 floors down. Arthur, you wrote nothing today. There was a pause on the line, long enough to be an answer. Then Pell said, The client's like a gray head in the room, Delphine. It isn't personal. It's an old business. I know exactly how old it is. Then don't make a fight out of a favor. He said her first name again, warmer, the way men do when they are closing a door gently. Congratulations on the cross. She set the phone down. Behind her, the office had gone quiet, in the particular way an office goes quiet, when everybody in it is pretending to read. Novak, she said, without turning. Metadata, tonight. At 6, the associates left. At 8, Yvette put a paper container of soup on the corner of the desk and stood there until Delphine touched it. There's a moving crew waiting on you, Yvette said. 3rd night in a row. They charge by the hour. I know what they charge. You've been in that apartment 11 days. There are still boxes in the hallway with your name on them. Delphine looked up. Is that a legal opinion? That's a friend opinion. Those are cheaper. Yvette set the reading glasses down properly on the desk, which meant she was leaving. Go home, Delphine. The spreadsheet will still be a lie in the morning. The Aurelian Tower had a lobby with a brass crest set into the floor, and a man named Daniel Okonkwo Reyes, who had memorized her name before she finished her first sentence to him. He was standing at the concierge desk when she came in at 9:40, tablet under his arm, retractable keyring at his belt, glasses catching the overhead light. Miss Whitmore, 41. He said the floor like a fact he was pleased with. 2 deliveries. And the movers left your last 4 boxes inside the door. They wouldn't stack them without you signing. I'll sign now. You'll sign tomorrow. They're gone. He turned the tablet toward her anyway, out of habit, and the small keloid scar on his chin moved when he smiled. Also, the West Riser has a pressure issue. Building's aware. If your water knocks in the pipe at night, that's the building, not a ghost. Does it knock? On 41 it knocks. She rode up alone. The elevator had a mirrored panel, and she looked at it once, briefly, the curls loose and heavy at her shoulders, the flick of liner still holding at 9 at night, the thin gold watch on her left wrist reading 9:44, and then she looked at the floor numbers instead. 41 had 8 rooms and furniture for 3 of them. She dropped the briefcase by the door, kicked the heels off and left them where they landed, one upright, one on its side. The living room held a sofa still wearing its plastic, a floor lamp, and a stack of unopened boxes taped shut in a hand that was not hers. The kitchen had a kettle. She filled it because filling it was a thing to do with her hands. The city was out there past the glass, 41 floors of nothing between her and it, and she stood with her back to the window while the water heated. Her mother called at 10. You sound like the office, Loretta said. I'm home. You sound like the office at home. That's worse. There was the sound of a chair and a television being muted. Was it today? The accountant? It was today. Hand? Delphine watched the kettle. I broke him open in the 2nd hour. Then why do you sound like that? Because a man who slept through it took the microphones, and I stood on a step below him in a red suit, and nobody moved a stand. She heard herself say it and closed her eyes. Don't what? Don't tell me it's fine. I wasn't going to tell you it's fine. Loretta's voice had the flatness it got when she was choosing. I was going to ask you if you ate. I have soup. Having isn't eating. A pause. Your father used to stand under a loading dock light at 11 at night, doing arithmetic he already knew the answer to. He'd say he was checking. He wasn't checking. Mama. I'm just saying you get it honest. The television came back on, low. Go to bed, baby. Delphine held the phone after the line went dead. Then she set it face down on the counter and turned around, and the boxes were still there. She had walked past them for 11 days. Tonight, she pulled the tape. The first two held books she had not opened since law school, spine up, alphabetized by a version of herself with more time. The third held a coffee grinder and a wedding photograph of an aunt. The fourth was lighter than the others and had been sealed with a different tape, older, yellowed at the edges, and the movers had left it at the bottom of the stack in every apartment she had lived in since she was 22, because she had never once told them to open it, and they were paid not to ask. She cut it with a kitchen knife. Inside, there were receipts in rubber bands, a rate card for a freight company in a typeface nobody had used in 15 years, 2 keys on a loop of wire, and a folder, gray, board stiff, with a label typed on a machine and stuck on crooked. Whitmore Freight, 2009. She sat down on the floor with her back against the sofa, and the plastic on the sofa crackled, and she left the folder closed on her knees for a while. Then she opened it. Page 1 was a schedule of liabilities. She had been 19 when it was printed, and she had read it at the kitchen table with a highlighter she stole from her own school bag, believing that if she read it slowly enough, it would stop meaning what it meant. 12 trucks, 31 employees, a warehouse on a road named after a saint, Loretta Whitmore, sole owner, signature at the bottom in a hand that had not yet started to shake. Page 4 was the one she remembered. An unsecured line of credit called, in full, on a Tuesday, 90 days after a bank had renewed it in writing. There was a letter from the bank about a change in risk posture. There was a second letter from the same bank, dated 11 days earlier, promising the opposite. 19-year-old Delphine had put a star beside them. She had not known then what she knew now, that 2 letters like that, 11 days apart, are not a bank changing its mind. They are a bank being told something. She turned the page. An offer to purchase the assets. 12 trucks, the warehouse, the routes, the contracts, at 41 cents on the dollar, made 96 hours after the line was called, by a holding entity with a post office box and a name that meant nothing. 3 words that could have been anything, a law firm, a marina, a shell. She read the 3 words. She read them again. Then she got up, walked to the door in bare feet, and came back with the briefcase. She cleared the floor with her forearm and laid it out, the folder pages in one line, her legal pad in another, the pen uncapped with her teeth. She wrote the holding company's name at the top of a clean page. Under it she wrote, Registered Agent. Under that, Officers. Under that, Who called the line? The kettle had gone cold on the burner an hour ago. She never poured it. At 12:20, the pipe knocked in the wall behind her. 3 flat strikes, then nothing, exactly as the building manager had promised, and she looked up at the wall for a second, and then back down at the page. She had asked her mother about the buyer once. She had been 23, second year at the firm, full of new vocabulary. Loretta had been washing a pan. Loretta had said, Some things you carry and some things you set down, and the trick is knowing which. And then she had asked about Delphine's rent, and that was the end of it, and Delphine had never asked again because she had understood that the question cost her mother more than the answer was worth. She was not 19 now. She was not 23. She wrote a fifth line on the pad. Pull the 2009 UCC filings. State, not federal. Then she sat back on her heels and looked at the mess she had made across the floor of an apartment she had not unpacked, and she laughed once, without much in it. The phone lit up on the counter, face down, and vibrated in a slow half-circle. She let it go. It stopped. It started again. She crossed the room and turned it over. Yvette, at 12:41 in the morning, which Yvette had never done in 4 years. "Tell me you're awake," Yvette said. "I'm awake." "Okay?" A breath. Paper being moved. So I stayed. I was pulling the metadata for Novak, because Novak went home at 7, like a man with a life, and while I was in the docket system, I got flagged on a calendar alert. Not ours. It's a public entry. Yvette. Miran Group. Yvette said it carefully, the way you set a glass down on a table you don't own. The chairman was indicted 11 days ago. Federal. Money laundering, 18 counts. Halloran's name is on it. Delphine stood very still, in the middle of her unfurnished living room. "Gregory Halloran," she said. "Same office. Same man who buried your wire dates today," Yvette exhaled. "That's not why I called." "Then why did you call?" "Because their outside counsel filed a notice of appearance this afternoon, and then withdrew it at 6:15 tonight." Withdrew, Delphine, 11 days out, and 40 minutes ago somebody at Miran Group put a calendar entry in a system I can see because the setting is public and nobody over there checks. An entry for what? 9 a.m. tomorrow. Boardroom, their headquarters. Yvette paused. Item 1. It's a name. Delphine's hand found the counter edge. "Say it." "Whitmore." The pipe knocked again in the wall. 3 strikes. Delphine did not hear it. She looked down at the floor, at the gray folder lying open on page 4, at the 3 words of a holding company she had written at the top of a legal pad 20 minutes ago, in her own handwriting, and she felt something move in the room that had nothing to do with the phone against her ear. "Delphine?" Yvette said. "You there? Nobody called us. Nobody sent us anything. We're not on that calendar as a firm. We're on it as a word." A rustle. "I can find out who put it in. Give me an hour." "No. No." Delphine crouched. She gathered the pages one at a time, squared them on the floor, and closed the gray folder over them. "Have the car at 7, she said. 7? Court's at 10, you don't need. Not court." She stood, folder against her hip, and looked at the 2 nude heels lying where she had left them by the door, one upright and one on its side. "I want the docket, the indictment, all 18 counts, and every filing Halloran's office made in the last 11 days. Printed, in the car. You're going to walk into a board meeting that didn't invite you." "They put my name on the agenda, Yvette." She was already moving toward the bedroom. "That's an invitation with the manners left off." She hung up before Yvette could answer. Then she stopped in the hallway, in the dark, with the folder still under her arm, and she turned back and looked at it under the light, the crooked label, the yellowed tape she had cut through an hour ago, after 11 days and 7 years of not cutting it. She had opened it tonight of all the nights she'd had. Delphine put the folder in the briefcase, closed the clasp, and set the briefcase by the door where she would trip over it if she tried to leave without it. At 6:58 the next morning, Daniel Okonkwo Reyes held the lobby door and said the weather was going to turn, and she said something back that neither of them would remember. At 8:52, the car stopped in front of a black tower on the west side with no name on it, only a number. She checked the gold watch on her left wrist. She got out. The lobby of the Miran Tower had no reception desk. It had a man in a black suit standing where a desk should be, and a bank of 6 elevators behind him, and nothing on the walls. "Whitmore," Delphine said. Seo Do-yoon put 2 fingers to the earpiece, listened, and pressed the call button for the elevator on the far right. He did not ask for identification. He did not ask her to open the briefcase. That was the first thing she wrote down, in her head, on the list she kept for people who lied to her later. The elevator had no floor buttons. It had a card reader and a mirrored ceiling. Do-yoon rode with her, facing the doors, hands crossed at the belt. The car climbed for 40 seconds without a chime. "How many people are in the room?" she asked. 11. "How many of them want me there?" The doors opened. Do-yoon stepped aside. 1. The corridor ran 40 feet to a set of double doors, and the doors were already ajar, and a man's voice was coming through them in the flat register of a person reading from slides. Delphine slowed, not to listen, to count. She counted 3 sentences and knew exactly what kind of defense the Miran group had bought. And by segregating the transactional history at the subsidiary level, we demonstrate that the chairman's signature authority was, in the relevant period, largely ceremonial. She pushed the door with the flat of her hand. 11 faces turned. The presenter stopped with his clicker raised. On the screen behind him sat an org chart in 4 colors, with a box at the top labeled Chairman, and a dotted line running away from it like an apology. Nobody stood. One man did. He was seated at the far end, not the head, the far end, the corner, with the window behind him, and he rose the way a door opens, without hurry, charcoal 3-piece, black tie. He said nothing, and he did not sit back down, and after a second, 2 other men at the table stood too, because he had. Miss Whitmore. That came from the vice chairman, mid-table, navy suit, gold tie clip. He was smiling before she looked at him. "Park Min-suk, we were expecting you at 9:15. Your calendar said 9. Our calendars are aspirational." "Then I'll be aspirational too." She set the oxblood briefcase on the corner of the table and did not open it. 4 minutes. Then I'll tell you whether I take the case. The presenter laughed, once, in the way men laugh when they are checking whether laughing is allowed. Nobody joined him. Delphine turned to the screen. "Whose theory is this?" "Mine," the presenter said. "Ha Jin-woo, in-house." "Then this is the last morning it's yours." She walked to the screen and stood beside the org chart, and she pointed at the dotted line. "You are going to tell a jury that the chairman of this company had ceremonial authority. 18 counts. Every count is a wire, and every wire has a signature block, and your defense is that the signature meant nothing. The subsidiary structure supports. Halloran's opening statement writes itself off that slide. She said the name to the room and watched which faces moved. 3 did. He puts your chart up. He circles the box. He says, "This man's lawyers came into this courtroom and told you their client signs things he doesn't read." Then he asks the jury whether that's a defense or a confession. Jin-woo's clicker came down to his side. "Second problem." She turned to the table. "You've been arguing this case as if the government has the documents. The government doesn't have documents. The government has metadata. 18 counts, and I read all 18 on the drive here, and 14 of them are pled off digital signature events, not paper, events, times, terminals. We are aware of the. Nobody in this room has asked where the terminal was." She let that sit for 2 seconds. That's the case. That's the whole case. Not the structure, not the ceremonial nonsense. The case is a room, a machine in that room, and a badge that says who walked into it. The man at the far end, still standing, moved for the first time. He reached out and turned Jin-woo's laptop 90 degrees so that the screen faced the wall. "Third problem," Delphine said. "And this one is yours, not his. Your outside counsel filed a notice of appearance 11 days ago and withdrew it at 6:15 the same evening. 6:15 is not a conflict check." 6:15 is a phone call. Somebody in your organization told a law firm to walk, and then somebody in your organization put my name on the agenda for this morning without asking me first, and those are either the same person or two people who talk. Minsok's right hand went to the back of his left. He rubbed at something there with his thumb. You have a suspicious mind. You have 18 counts. The room made no sound. Outside the glass, the city sat in the flat morning light of a day that had not decided anything yet. Time, Delphine said. She checked the gold watch. That was 4 minutes. Here's my price, and it isn't money. She opened the briefcase then, took out one sheet, and slid it down the polished table. It stopped in front of Minsok because he put his hand on it. Unrestricted access, she said. Every ledger, every subsidiary, every wire, every badge log, every server log, going back 10 years. Not curated, not summarized, not what your compliance department thinks I need. Everything. 10 years is beyond the indictment period. The indictment period is where they're looking. 10 years is where they'll go when I take the indictment period away from them. Some of that material is. Minsok's smile had thinned to a line. Commercially sensitive. So is a conviction. The board would have to vote. The board is welcome to vote. Delphine closed the briefcase. I don't work with a leash. If any door in this company is locked to me, I'll assume what's behind it is what the government is looking for. And so will every jury I've ever stood in front of. You can hire somebody who'll accept the leash. He'll lose, and you'll all be very comfortable with him while he does it. She picked up the case. She looked at the 11 of them, one by one, and none of them looked back for long, except the man at the far end, who had not spoken a single word since she came through the door. Somebody has my number, she said. Somebody clearly has my whole life. She was 3 steps from the door when the voice came. Everyone out. It was quiet. That was the strange part. He did not raise it, and nothing about it asked. Chairs moved. 11 people gathered folders and left the room, and Minsok was the last of them, and at the doorway he turned, as if he had remembered something charming. Miss Whitmore, it's a pleasure to finally… Minsok, just the name, from the far end. The vice chairman left. The door clicked. Delphine and Kang Taejun were alone in a room built for 20. Sit, he said. Then, after a beat, please. She stayed standing. You're the chairman. I am. You let a man present a defense you'd already decided to throw away. I let a man present a defense so I'd know who wrote it. He came down the length of the table and stopped 4 feet from her. The collar was closed. The black ink at the side of his neck ran up from under it and disappeared beneath his jaw. You said the case is a room and a machine and a badge. Yes. On what date do you think I was in that room? Delphine set the briefcase back down. I don't know yet. Neither do they. He pulled out a chair, not for himself. He turned it toward her and let go of it. That is the first time in 11 days that a lawyer has said, I don't know to me. Everyone else has been certain and wrong, and the certainty cost more. She sat. He sat across the corner from her, close enough that she could hear him breathe, which was not a thing she had expected to notice about a man indicted 18 times. Your terms, he said, aren't negotiable. I didn't ask to negotiate. He took a fountain pen from the inside of his jacket, uncapped it, and drew the retainer sheet across the table with one finger. He signed without reading past the first paragraph. Then he wrote something under the signature line. 3 lines, small, in a hand that was almost print, and turned the page around. Delphine read it. Under his name he had written, Access A1 through A9, including archive, security to comply, KTJ. A9 is what? Everything before I was chairman. Before you were chairman is 9 years ago. 10. he said. She let the number sit there without touching it. He had matched her 10. She had asked for 10, because 10 was the round number a lawyer asks for. He had heard a different reason in it, and she watched him decide not to say so. Question, she said. Ask. Who put my name on the agenda? Min-suk. Why? He told the board you win. Taejun capped the pen. He was very persuasive about it. 11 and 14, he said. He had the numbers before I did. That's public. It is. So is the fact that 3 other firms in this city have better numbers on paper. He set the pen down parallel to the edge of the table. He wanted you specifically. He said your name 4 times before he said your firm's. Delphine's thumb moved once across the face of her watch. And you agreed. I agreed after you walked in. You'd already decided before I walked in. Yes. No apology in it. I wanted to see whether you'd let me be the one who decided. She almost smiled. She didn't. Second question. Your outside counsel walked at 6:15. Who called them? I don't know. That's an unusual thing for a man like you not to know. It's the reason you're sitting there. He turned his wrist and looked at the matte black watch, and something in the gesture was so exactly her own that she felt it land. In the last 11 days, 4 things have happened inside this building that I did not authorize. A law firm resigned. A server room was rekeyed. A shipping subsidiary paid a settlement I never saw, and a woman I had never met was placed at the top of a board agenda. And you think those 4 things are one thing? I think, he said, that the government has an 18-count indictment, and somebody handed it to them wrapped. Delphine sat with that. In the glass behind him, the city had gone bright, and she looked past his shoulder at the west side of it, at a low grid of warehouse roofs that ran down toward the river, and she pulled her eyes back, because looking there did not help her today. I'll need the badge logs before anything else, she said. Not the summary report, the raw export, and I want them pulled by someone who doesn't report to Min-suk. Do-yoon reports to me, then Do-yoon. Done. He stood and buttoned the jacket. 6 o'clock. The financial archive is on 22. It takes 4 hours to unlock the older systems, and I would rather you saw it opened than handed to you. 22. Her own office was on the 22nd floor of a different building across the city, and the coincidence was nothing, and she noticed it anyway. 6, she said. She came back at 6 in emerald green, because the scarlet had been for a courtroom, and this was not going to be a courtroom, and because the archive floor was 30 degrees colder than the street, and she had learned a long time ago to dress for the room she was going to lose hours in. Do-yoon met her at the elevator with a tablet and a key on a steel loop. He did not speak on the walk down the corridor. He put the key into a panel beside a door that had no handle, and the door drew back into the wall, and behind it were 11 rows of steel shelving lit from above. Boxes are by year, he said. Digital terminals at the end. Chairman's authorization is loaded. Who else has this key? 4 people. Names, please. Do-yoon looked at her for a moment with the flat patience of a man who is rarely asked for anything twice. Then he wrote 4 names on the tablet and turned it toward her. She read them. Min-suk was second. Thank you. She worked for 2 hours and 40 minutes. She pulled the badge export first and found what she expected to find, which was that there was too much of it. 300,000 rows of door events with no anchor to a wire transfer. She pulled the wire schedules second. She started the ugly work of matching them, and by 8, she had a list of 11 timestamps that mattered more than the rest, and she had written across the top of the page, in her own hand, the question she had been carrying for a day and a half, in a different case entirely. Who reconstructed them? She was still looking at it when he came in. Taejun had a paper bag in one hand and 2 cups in the other, and the sleeve of the charcoal jacket was gone. He had left it somewhere. He set the cups on the end of the table, away from the documents. Not on them. Away from them, she noticed that too. "You haven't stood up in an hour," he said. "How do you know?" "There are cameras. I've been watching them, instead of doing the thing I was supposed to be doing." Which was? Deciding whether to fire Min-suk. Delphine put the pen down. "Don't." "No? If he's the one, firing him tells him you know, and everything he's holding goes out the door with him. If he isn't the one, you've cut off your own hand for nothing." She pushed the list of 11 timestamps 2 inches toward him. "Leave him exactly where he is, and let him keep signing things." Taejin looked at the page for a long moment. "You've been here 3 hours. 2 hours and 50 minutes. And you're already telling me who to keep in my house. You gave me A1 through A9. That's the same thing as asking." He pulled out the chair opposite hers and sat, and he pushed one of the cups across, and she took it, because her hands had gone cold in that room. "Have dinner with me," he said. Delphine set the cup down without drinking. "No. On Thursday, there is a place on the water that keeps a room. I'm your lawyer as of 9:40 this morning." "I know what you are." "Then you know what dinner is." She turned the page over, face down, and squared it with the table edge. 18 counts. If Halloran finds one photograph of me across a table from you, he doesn't need the wires. He'll say I was bought before I read the file, and the jury will believe it, and you'll go to prison because I liked the view. That's a no about the jury. It's a no. Is it a no about Thursday or about all the Thursdays? She did not answer that, and the not answering took a half-second too long, and they both heard it. Taejun stood. He put his fingertips on the table and looked at the 11 rows of shelving as if he were counting them, and he was not counting them. "I won't ask again," he said. "I don't ask twice, and I don't send men to say things I can say, so there is only one arrangement left, and I'll give it to you now, and then it's finished. Chairman, when you decide," he said, "don't call. Just knock on my door." Delphine looked up. "You don't know where I live." "No," he agreed. He picked up his untouched cup, and at the doorway he stopped, and the light from the corridor put the black ink at his neck in full view where the open collar left it. "You will." Delphine packed the 11 timestamps into a single folder, wrote a code on the tab, and carried it out of the archive herself, instead of leaving it on the steel shelf. Do-yoon walked her to the elevator. He held the card against the reader and stood back. "Mr. Kang left instructions," he said. "Anything you take out of this floor, I log, not the vice chairman." "Log it," she said. "Write my name in full." The car dropped 40 seconds and opened on a lobby with no reception. Her driver waited at the curb with the engine running. She got in, put the briefcase on the seat beside her, and rested her hand flat on top of it the whole way home. At the Aurelian Tower, Daniel Okonkwo Reyes was still at the desk at 10 past 10, which was 2 hours past when a building manager should be at a desk. "Long day for both of us," he said. "You said the West Riser has a pressure problem. 3rd time this month. Which floors?" He tilted the tablet toward himself out of habit, then answered without reading it. 38 up, 41's the worst of it. Has anyone come to fix it? Vendors booked out. I have a work order open. He said it the way men say things they have said many times, to people who never come. She thanked him and went up. The apartment was still 8 rooms of nothing. She stood in the doorway with her heels in her hand and looked at the wall of boxes, and for the first time in 12 days, the boxes irritated her instead of waiting patiently. She slept 4 hours on the plastic-wrapped sofa and woke before the alarm. The next day, she spent at her own office on the 22nd floor, running Novak until he begged for a second associate, and by 6 in the evening, she had a wall chart nobody outside the firm was allowed to photograph. Yvette taped the last sheet up and stepped back. 11 timestamps, Yvette said. 11. Same number as the shelves in their archive. Same number as people in that boardroom. Coincidence is a thing that happens. Sure. Yvette pushed her glasses up into her hair. Go home, Delphine. Open a box. 1 box. I'll know if you lie to me. So she went home and opened boxes. She put on jeans and a white tank and her mother's old cardigan and worked the way she cross-examined, 1 carton at a time, no skipping, no sorting for later. By 8, the kitchen had plates in it. By 9, she had found the washing machine behind a folding door in the hallway, still on its shipping bolts, and had called the number Daniel taped inside the panel. The installer came at 9:40, a kid with a wrench roll and a badge from a contractor she'd never heard of, and he was gone in 11 minutes. That was the first thing she would think about later. At 10, she carried the empty cartons out to the service corridor, and that was where she met her neighbor. There were only 2 doors on the 41st floor. She had assumed for 12 days that the other one belonged to a shell company because the plate beside it had no name, only a number. The door was open. A man in a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows was carrying a case of water in from the elevator lobby, and he stopped when he saw her, and she stopped when she saw the black ink at the side of his neck. Neither of them said anything for a second longer than was comfortable. You, she said. Taejun set the case down against the wall. 41B. How long? 6 years. You knew last night. I knew when you gave me your address for the retainer file, he said. At 9:40 in the morning. She had a stack of flattened cardboard under one arm, and she was aware of it. You could have said something. I said something. He didn't reach for the water again. You told me you don't know where I live. That was a joke you made. It was an address. Delphine let the cardboard slide down against the wall. In her chest, something turned over that she chose to ignore. This is a problem. Opposing counsel finds out my client is 30 feet from my bed, and Halloran has a motion by Friday. Then it's a problem you had before you knew about it. He nodded at her hallway. You have a leak. I have a what? He pointed. Under her door, a dark line had come across the marble and reached the seam of the corridor tile. She got there first. The hall inside was wet to the ankle before she reached the folding door, and the noise behind it was not the noise a machine makes. Water was coming off the back of the drum in a flat sheet and hitting the wall. She grabbed the shutoff behind the unit and turned it, and the handle spun loose in her fingers, all the way around, twice, without biting anything. It's stripped, she said. Move. He was past her, on his knees in it, hands under the machine looking for the riser stub. Then he stood. Main valves not on this floor. Utility closet, service corridor, it's keyed. She already had her phone out of the cardigan pocket. The screen came up, the dial pad came up, and the call died before the first ring. 1 bar, then none. She tried again. The building's repeater on 41 had been the other thing Daniel had an open work order for. Nothing, she said. Daniel's desk is 39 floors down. How long? 6 minutes on the elevator, if it's sitting in the lobby. The water was over her feet now. She looked at the hall, at the 8 rooms she had finally started to live in, at the stack by the wall where the oxblood briefcase lay flat with the gray folder inside it, and she moved the briefcase first. She put it on the kitchen counter, high, dry, and she felt Taejun watch her do it. Go, he said. Get out of the wet. I have the key. You have the key to a building utility closet. I have the key to this floor. He went. She stood in her own flooded hallway in soaked jeans, and then she did the arithmetic that any lawyer does, and hated the answer. She went to the bathroom, stripped, and stood under 2 minutes of hot water, because she was already wet, and being wet and freezing would help nothing. She wrapped a towel tight around herself, stepped into a pair of leather slides, and looked at herself in the fogged glass with her curls dark and heavy on her shoulders. The lights went out. Not the whole floor, her floor. The breaker had eaten enough water to make a decision. She crossed the black hallway with one hand on the wall, water pushing warm around her ankles, and she got to her own front door and out into the corridor, and there she stood, on the dry marble in a towel, in front of the only other door on the 41st floor. There was no phone. There was no elevator card in her hand. There was no version of this where she called first. She knocked. The door opened in 3 seconds, which meant he had been standing on the other side of it. He had changed out of the wet shirt into black. He looked at her face, and only at her face. "The breaker went," she said. "Come in. I need the main valve. I killed it 4 minutes ago." He stood aside. "Your floor's dry from the closet back. What's still coming out is what was already in the pipe." She stepped in. The penthouse across the hall had furniture in every room, which struck her as obscene. He came back with a black silk robe over his arm, oversized, and he handed it to her at arm's length and turned around while she put it on. "You can turn," she said. He turned. "Your machine was installed tonight. 9:40, 11 minutes. 11 minutes is fast." He was fast. Taejun picked up a flashlight from a drawer and a hand towel. "Bring the light. I want you to see it while it's still wet." They went back across the hall. He crouched at the folding door and put the beam on the coupling behind the drum, and he wiped the fitting dry with the towel, and then he held the light at an angle so the metal took it sideways. "There," he said. Delphine crouched next to him. On the flat of the nut, 2 bright lines cut across the finish, one on each face. "Wrench," she said. A wrench that slipped once, and then held. Somebody backed this off. He put 2 fingers on it and turned it a quarter with no effort at all. 3/4 of a turn is a burst under building pressure. On this riser, it's a burst on a schedule. Tonight, the pressure spikes. Every night after 10. Your manager has a work order open on it, so does the vendor. He held the light steady. Everybody who has ever complained about this floor has a piece of paper saying the water on 41 is the building's fault. She stayed crouched a moment longer than she needed to. Then she stood, and she turned, and she walked past him into the flooded living room and put the beam of her own eyes on the wall where she had stacked the case files that afternoon. 4 boxes. Whitmore and Associates, Mirren Matter, copies only, no originals off the client site. The 4th one was open. Taejun. He came. She had the flashlight now, and she was holding it above the box the way you hold light over a wound. "I taped these at 6, she said. "All 4. Same tape, same hand. This one's been cut and pressed back down. Water lifts tape. Water lifts tape from the end. This is cut across the middle." She put a fingernail into the seam and lifted it. It came up in one piece. Somebody used a blade and then pushed it flat with a thumb. She went through it on the wet floor with the towel-heavy robe around her, and she went through it the way she went through a government production, item by item, out loud. Retainer copy, here. Halloran's filings, 11 days, here. Badge export summary, here. Wire schedules, here. Her hands stopped. Discovery. This morning's discovery. The set Do-yoon pulled. The set Do-yoon pulled at 11 a.m., and I signed for at 11:10. My working copy. She set the folder edges down. It's gone. He crouched across the box from her. Only that. Only that. 800 pages of everything else still here, soaking. And the one thing that walked out of this apartment is the only document in this room that didn't exist yesterday. Neither of them moved for a moment. The water made a small sound against the baseboard. She counted the remaining pages twice, out loud, and the second count matched the first. Then she pulled the working copy's cover sheet from the file behind it. The routing slip, still stapled, still hers, with her initials in the corner box and the time written beside them. They left the slip, she said. Careless. Or they wanted the pages and had 90 seconds. She held it up in the beam. 11:10. My hand. If they'd taken this too, I'd have needed a week to notice which set was missing. Now I know exactly what they have. Which is what? Every subsidiary Dongyun unlocked this morning, with my margin notes on 11 of them. She lowered the slip. They didn't steal your documents, Taejun. They stole my reading of them. He took that without moving toward it. Then they know what you're looking at before you find it. They know what I was looking at 11 this morning. She folded the slip into the pocket of the robe. By 6 tonight, I was somewhere else. That's the only advantage I have, and it lasts about a day. They flooded my apartment to open a box, she said. They flooded your apartment so nobody would ever ask why a box was open. He stood. In the morning, you'd have called the building. The building would have called the vendor. The vendor would have said West Riser, and every wet thing in here becomes an insurance form. And I'd have reprinted my discovery and never counted the pages. You'd have had a bad week. Delphine laughed once, without anything in it, and pushed her wet curls back off her face. The installer had a badge. Then, Daniel has a log. Daniel has an elevator log too. She was already writing in her head. Every service card that comes above 38 after 8 p.m. has to be authorized by someone in the building system. Someone signed that kid up here. Ask him tomorrow. I'll ask him tonight. She looked up. And I want the name of the vendor on that work order, run against Miron's payables. 10 years. A9. Taejun's mouth moved slightly at the corner, the first thing close to a smile she had seen on him. You think it's inside my company? I think somebody who knows what came out of your archive at 11 this morning knew it was in a box in my hallway at 10 tonight. That is a very short list of people. She got to her feet. Your vice chairman is on it. He's second on it. Who's first? You, Taejun said. And I'm third. That's the whole list, counselor. Do-yoon is fourth, and he pulled the file himself, which makes him the only one who didn't need to steal it. She held that. It was clean, and it was correct, and it was a thing most clients would never say out loud. Then we have a problem with how we work, she said. Say it. Nothing goes in a box in my hallway again. Nothing goes in your archive again either. 4 people have that key, and I've already met 2 of them. She pulled the robe tighter and started walking, and he followed, and she was giving instructions in her own flooded apartment at 20 past midnight, in a towel and another man's silk. Anything I find, you see the same night. Anything you find, I see the same night. In a room, on paper, no email, no copy that lives anywhere either of us can't touch. And nobody else holds it. Nobody, not Yvette, not Do-yoon, not your board. She stopped at the door. You understand what I'm proposing. If this ever gets looked at, it looks like an attorney and a client alone at midnight, passing documents nobody logged. It looks like what it is. It looks like what it is only if we win. He held the door for her, and she went out into the corridor, and the dry marble was cold under her feet. He came out after her with the flashlight and stood at his own threshold. Your apartment's not habitable tonight, he said. I noticed. There are 4 bedrooms behind me, and I use one. No, I wasn't asking twice. He handed her the flashlight instead. Daniel keeps a corporate unit on 12 for exactly this. Take the guest card off my counter, the one on the left, and don't sign anything at the desk. Delphine took the light. She stood there with her hand around it. Why did you kill the valve before I knocked? She asked. Because I heard the machine through the wall. That's not what I asked. Taejun looked at her for the length of a breath. "I've been listening to that wall for 12 days, he said, and stepped back and started to close the door. Taejun. He stopped. "The nut," she said. "Don't touch it again. Don't let a vendor near it. I want it photographed in place, then cut out with the pipe and bagged, and I want the bag in Do-yoon's hands before 6 a.m. That's evidence handling. That's a crime scene in my hallway." She turned toward the elevator, and then she turned back, and the light in her hand threw a long shape up the corridor wall. "One more thing. Whoever came into my apartment tonight came in through a door with a building key. They knew what to take. They knew what a working copy looks like." She let it sit. "Which means they've read my handwriting before." She rode down to 12 at midnight in a stranger's robe with a flashlight and no phone. And by the time the doors opened, she had already decided what she was going to ask Daniel Okonkwo-Reyes, and in what order, and which of the 4 questions she was going to save for last. Daniel Okonkwo-Reyes met the elevator on 12 with a guest card already in his hand, and Delphine let him give it to her before she asked anything. 3 questions, she said, then a 4th. He tucked the tablet under his arm. The hallway light buzzed above them. The installer who came to 41A at 9:40, who cleared him at the desk. "Vendor list," Daniel said. He was on it. "Since when?" Daniel woke the tablet. He scrolled with one finger, and the scrolling took longer than it should have. "Tuesday," he said, added Tuesday, by work order. Which work order? West Riser. She had the burgundy robe belted at her waist and a flashlight hanging from her fist, and she stood in that hallway like a woman in a courtroom. "The work order that's been open 3 times this month with a vendor who has no availability," she said. "That vendor put a man in my apartment in 11 minutes. Daniel's jaw worked. "I can pull the elevator log." That's the 4th question. He pulled it. "Service car, 41, 2138 up, 2149 down." Then the same car, 41, 2302 up, 2311 down. On a card that carried no name at all, only a class code. "What's the class code?" "Corporate," Daniel said. "Master trades. Master trades." "Who issues those?" "Building." He rubbed the keloid on his chin, and any corporate tenant with a floor lease can request them in bulk. They come back to us as a block. We don't get the individual names. "How many corporate tenants hold a floor lease here?" 2. She thanked him. She wrote nothing down in front of him, which was itself a decision, and she rode up to the 12th floor unit and slept 3 hours on a mattress with no sheets and woke at 5:40 with the sentence already assembled in her head. By 6, she had Do-yoon on the phone. By 6:20, the sealed bag with the coupling nut was in a lab that had never taken Miran money. By 8, she was in her own office, in the champagne silk and the open charcoal blazer, barefoot under the desk, with Novak's 11 timestamps taped across the glass and a second sheet beside them that Novak had never seen. "You're wearing yesterday's face," Yvette said from the doorway. "I need the badge export cross, reference to the building Havhack log." Yvette stopped mid-step. "Whose building?" "Theirs. The Miran Tower. Every floor, every night, 10 years back if it goes that far." "Why Havhack?" "Because doors lie and air doesn't." Delphine turned the second sheet around. 14 of the 18 counts are signature events. Every signature event has a timestamp. Every timestamp says a man sat at Terminal A114 in the finance archive and pressed a key. Terminal A114 is in a room with no windows and a sealed return duct. Yvette came all the way in and shut the door with her heel. "On 7 of those 11 nights," Delphine said, "that room's air handler was locked out for filter service. Lockout means the room hits 91 degrees in 40 minutes. Nobody sat there for 6 hours signing wire authorizations at 91 degrees. That's not proof he wasn't there. No. Delphine tapped the top line. This is. The top line was a customs entry. Kang Taejun, arrival, 17 days before the earliest signature event. Departure, 4 days after it. A passport stamp in a country 11 time zones away. On the exact night terminal, A114, authorized 4 transfers between 1 and 4 in the morning. Local. Yvette read it twice. He was out of the country. He was out of the country for 3 of the 11. For 6 more, he was in a hospital corridor in Busan with his father, and the hospital logs visitors by national ID. Delphine capped her pen. For the last 2, he was in a board meeting with 19 witnesses and a stenographer. 11 for 11. All of them. Delphine pulled a 4th sheet from under the stack. And here's the part that gets him indicted instead of me. The signature software stamps a workstation identifier and a session length. 9 of the 11 sessions ran between 4 and 6 hours. One ran 11 minutes. Yvette leaned in. 11 minutes for what? 4 transfers, $210 million. Delphine set the sheet flat. A man authorizing his own wires reads them. A man forging a chairman's credentials is standing up the whole time. You can't put a posture in front of a jury. I can put a clock in front of a jury. She wrote a number in the margin. Halloran's own expert built that timeline. He'll have to defend it or abandon it, and either way, he's arguing against his own exhibit. Yvette took her glasses out of her hair and put them on, which she only did when she had stopped arguing. What do you need from me? Badge logs from the archive door for those 11 nights. Not the summary, the raw. That's Miran's system. You have the export, you pulled it yourself. Delphine met her eyes. Do it from your own machine, log it under your own badge, and write down the time you did it in that notebook you carry. Why the notebook? Because paper doesn't get edited. Yvette wrote the time down before she left the doorway. Delphine watched her do it, and felt something move that she chose to ignore. Somebody sat at that terminal, and signed his name with his credentials on every single night. He could prove he was somewhere else. She pulled the blazer straight. Halloran didn't check. Halloran never checks the where. He checks the what, and lets the jury do the rest. Yvette sat down slowly on the arm of the chair. Delphine, if somebody used his credentials, somebody had his credentials. Yes, that's 4 people. 3 now. Delphine slid the elevator log across. Du-Yoon pulled the discovery himself. A man who already has the paper doesn't cut tape to steal it. She worked through the afternoon without eating. At 4, she called her mother and heard herself say she was fine twice, which was 1 time more than the truth allowed, and Loretta Whitmore heard it too. Come Sunday, Loretta said. You'll come Sunday. I'll come tonight. She went at 7, still in the silk, and sat at her mother's kitchen table under a plum cardigan and a plate she barely touched. The pearl earrings caught the overhead light every time Loretta turned her head. You've got a case face on, Loretta said. In 2009, Delphine said, when they called the line. Did anybody from the bank ever tell you who asked them to call it? The fork stopped. It went down against the plate, tines flat. Baby, I'm not asking as your daughter. Then don't sit in my kitchen. Loretta took her glasses off the beaded chain and folded them. I told you at 23, some things you carry and some things you set down. You set it down and it followed me. Delphine kept her hands open on the table. 96 hours, Mama. 96 hours between the call and the offer. Nobody assembles an asset purchase in 96 hours unless the purchase was written before the call. Loretta's shoulders came down half an inch. She looked at the window over the sink for a long moment. There was a man, she said. He didn't come himself. He sent somebody with a briefcase and a number, and a form already typed with my name spelled right, and I had spelled it wrong on my own filings for 11 years. She put the glasses back on. That's all I have. I never saw a face. What name was on the form? 3 words. Loretta's mouth thinned. 3 words that meant nothing. I remember thinking a company with a real business doesn't need a name that sounds like weather. Delphine drove home with both hands on the wheel and the radio off. She was in the hallway of 41 at 10:20 when the message came. Not a call, a message from a number with no carrier prefix, and it contained no words at all. A single image of a page she recognized before her eyes finished the first line. Schedule of assets, 41 cents on the dollar, Whitmore Freight. 2 minutes later, a second image. The holding company's registration. 3 words, and beneath the 3 words, a line she had never had access to because it lived in a state UCC index nobody in her office had thought to pull, the assignment of the acquired paper, 90 days after closing, to a subsidiary. The subsidiary was a shipping company. The shipping company was Miran. She stood in a hallway with 2 doors and read it 4 times. Then she knocked. He opened in the black sweater, collar loose, a pen still in his left hand, and whatever he saw in her face made him step back before she asked. "Sit down," she said. "You're standing. I know what I'm doing." He set the pen on the console table. She came in as far as the edge of the rug and stopped there, and she held the phone up with the screen out, the way she held exhibits. "Tell me what this is." He looked. He looked for perhaps 3 seconds, and in those 3 seconds, the whole architecture of his stillness held, and then his jaw set once, and that was the crack. "Where did you get it?" "That's not the answer." "It's the more important question." Tae-jun. She lowered the phone. "In 2009, my mother owned 12 trucks and 31 employees, and a warehouse on a street named after a saint. A bank called her line 90 days after they renewed it in writing. 4 days later, a company with a made-up name bought the carcass at 41 cents. She held his eyes. 90 days after that, the paper landed inside your shipping subsidiary. Say the word yes, or say the word no." The clock over his kitchen read 1:51. "Yes," he said. She had known it in the hallway. Hearing it still moved something in her chest that she had no use for. "Whose signature?" "Not mine. I was 26. I ran nothing." He crossed to the window and turned back before he got there. The acquisition was authorized by the Office of the Vice Chairman under a standing mandate for distressed logistics. That office was Park Min-sok's. It has been Park Min-sok's for 19 years. "When did you learn my mother's name?" He held that. He held it long enough that she felt the floor tilt an inch. "Answer it." "Not tonight. You don't get to schedule this." "I get to answer it correctly." His voice stayed low. "If I answer it now, you will hear the wrong thing, and I will not be able to take it back, and you will fire me tomorrow before you use what I found tonight." "What you found tonight?" He went to the table by the window and came back with a folder, and he put it in her hands rather than on the surface between them, which she noticed. "The shell that received 4 of the 18 transfers," he said. "Registered agent in Wilmington. 2 directors, both nominees, both employed by the same trust company. That trust company manages 9 funds. One of those 9 holds a limited partnership interest that has been reported every year on a federal financial disclosure." Whose disclosure? Gregory Halloran's wife's blind trust, filed by Gregory Halloran, signed by Gregory Halloran. Delphine opened the folder and read standing up, and her hands were steady because she made them be. "He's prosecuting a laundering case," she said, "and money from the alleged laundering landed in a fund his household is invested in. $640,000 of gain in 11 months. He'd have to be blind." He is required to be blind. It's called a blind trust. Taejun's mouth moved without becoming a smile. It is a very loud kind of blindness. She turned a page, then another. Then she closed the folder and looked at him, and the room went quiet in a way that had nothing to do with sound. You had this before tonight. I had it at 11, and you were going to bring it across the hall. I was going to bring it across the hall at 2. Then you knew what else was coming across the hall at 2. She set the folder down on the console, edge square. Somebody sent me my mother's bankruptcy tonight, anonymously, timed. She lifted her chin. Whoever sent it wanted me standing in this room, asking you this question, and you knew the answer before I got here. You've known since the retainer. Maybe since the agenda. Yes. You let me sign. Yes. You let me sign. Take the case with an undisclosed conflict sitting in your own subsidiary ledger. Her voice never rose. It got flatter, and flatter was worse. Do you understand what that is? If Halloran learns that I am defending the corporation that bought my mother's company out of a bankruptcy, that same corporation may have engineered. The motion writes itself. He doesn't have to prove I'm compromised. He has to prove I might be. Then everything I've touched is fruit of a poisoned tree, and every count I've broken tonight goes back into the box, and 11 of the 14 come back to life. I know. You know, she laughed once, without anything in it. You've built the entire defense of your life on a lawyer you knew could be disqualified with one filing. I built it on a lawyer nobody could buy. He came one step closer and stopped when she didn't move. There were 3 firms with better numbers. Minseok named you 4 times. I let him because I wanted to see who he thought he was hiring. He thought he was hiring a bomb with a fuse he owned. And you thought? I thought I would tell you before he could. You didn't. The words landed in the room and stayed there. No, he said. I didn't. She picked up her phone. She put the 2 images side by side on the screen, and then she put the phone in the pocket of the blazer and looked at the door. Get out. He glanced once at the folder on the console, the Halloran Fund, the 9 trusts, the 640,000, the only thing in the room worth anything to either of them. Take it, she said. Leave it. I don't care which. The information is mine either way. I read it. Delphine, you're my client. As of tonight, you are only my client. She walked to the door and opened it herself, and the hallway light fell across the burgundy of the robe he had given her 3 nights ago, which she was no longer wearing and would never wear again. Tomorrow at 8, I want the full acquisition file for Whitmore Freight, every page, including the internal memo authorizing a purchase before the seller was insolvent. If you make me subpoena my own client, I will do it, and I will do it publicly. He stood in her doorway with the koi showing at his open collar and said nothing for 4 seconds. You should know something, he said. Whoever sent you those images tonight sent them to force exactly this. I'm aware. Then you're aware you just did what he wanted. Yes. She held the door. I also did what I wanted. Sometimes those are the same door, and you still walk through it, because the alternative is standing in a room with a man who decides what I'm ready to hear. He stepped out into the hall. He turned back once. Ask me the question again, he said. In daylight. In your office. On the record if you want it. I'll answer it. I'll ask it when I can survive the answer. She closed the door. 2 minutes past 2. She stood with her back against it, and her eyes open in the dark. Then she moved. She went to the kitchen counter and took the gray folder out of the oxblood briefcase for the first time in front of no one, and she laid the 2009 schedule of liabilities beside the printed page Novak had pulled that morning, the Miron Shipping Subsidiaries 10-year payables, A9, unlocked by a handwritten line in Kang Tae-jun's own hand. There was a vendor on the payables, A small one, a recurring one. Mechanical services, West Riser work, paid quarterly for 11 years by a shipping subsidiary that owned no buildings. Delphine put her finger on the line and did not lift it for a long time. Then she picked up her phone and called Duyun at 2 in the morning and said 8 words. Pull every authorization code on that vendor's contracts. Duyun called back at 4:12 in the morning, and the first thing he said was that the vendor contracts were gone. Delphine sat up on the plastic-wrapped couch with the phone already against her ear. Gone how? The folder opens, the contracts are inside, the authorization block is blank on all of them. All 11 years. All of them. Someone ran a field wipe on the vendor master last night, 22 minutes past 1. She looked at the clock on the oven. She had called him at 2, before I asked. 20 minutes before. So the wipe had come before her order, not after it. That meant it had not been triggered by her. It had been scheduled. Somebody had been planning to clean that vendor for days, and had simply arrived at the top of their own list. Do the backups roll? Nightly to tape. The tape rotation for that library was suspended 8 days ago. There's a work order. Of course there is. She stood, barefoot, and walked to the counter where the gray folder still lay open beside the Miran payables. Who signs a tape suspension? Facilities. Who authorizes facilities? He didn't answer, which was the answer. She hung up and did not sleep again. At 6, she showered, and at 7, she was on the phone with her own bank because a wire that should have cleared to the firm's operating account had not cleared, and the woman on the line kept saying the word. Hold. In a voice trained to say it without meaning anything. At 7:40, Yvette called. She was crying, which Delphine had never once heard in 4 years, and she was crying while reading aloud, which was worse. It's on the front of the business section, page 1, below the fold. They have the discovery. Which pages? Your pages, Delphine. They printed your handwriting. The photograph ran 3 columns wide, a page of Miran's subsidiary schedules, with margin notes in a slanted hand, 1 word circled twice, an arrow drawn from an entity name to the number beside it. The caption said the document had been provided to the paper by a source with knowledge of the defense. The story said that a lawyer for the accused had annotated privileged government material in a manner suggesting foreknowledge of the transfers. The story ran under Gregory Halloran's name in the 3rd paragraph. Get everyone in, Delphine said. Nobody touches a keyboard until I'm there. She got there at 8:20 in the black sheath dress, the high neck, the heels, no jewelry but the watch, because there was going to be photography today, and she had decided what she would look like in it. 11 people stood in the reception area of the 22nd floor, and none of them sat when she came in. Arthur Pell was already at the glass wall with the 11 timestamps taped to it. He had a cup of coffee in one hand and a printout in the other, and he had never once been in that room at 8 in the morning. Take it down, he said. No, Delphine. That is my client's file on my wall in my firm. It's a photograph waiting to happen. He tapped the printout against his leg. You've seen it. I've read it. Then you know what it says about all of us. He put the coffee down on someone's desk without looking. I have 4 clients calling me before 9. I don't have 4 answers. Give them 1. The document was stolen out of a sealed box in my apartment on Tuesday night, and the theft was reported to building security the same night. Reported to whom, exactly? She held his eyes. The building manager. Not the police. No, not the court. No. Pell exhaled through his nose. So the sequence, as a stranger hears it, is, you take a Mafia chairman as a client, you carry his discovery home, you lose it, you tell a doorman, and it surfaces in the press with your notes on it. That's the sequence a stranger hears. That's the only sequence anyone hears. He picked up the coffee again. There's no version of this where I'm the villain, Delphine. I'm just the one saying it out loud first. At 9:15, the federal filing hit the docket. Halloran moved to disqualify Whitmore and Associates from any representation touching the Mirren indictment, and attached, as exhibits, the news photograph, a declaration from a paralegal in his own office, and a 2-page recitation of what he called a pattern of privileged material moving in one direction. At 9:40, a second filing followed. This one asked the court to freeze, pending inquiry, all accounts into which Mirren Group had paid retainer funds. Delphine read both standing up. Novak stood beside her, reading over her shoulder, and stopped at the same line she stopped at. "He's not saying you leaked it," Novak said. "No. He's saying you might have. He's saying it can't be ruled out." She turned the page. "He doesn't have to prove I'm dirty. He has to prove nobody can be sure I'm clean. That's a much cheaper case." The client calls began at 10, 3 by noon. A commodities executive who had been with her for 2 years, a hospital CFO, a man whose entire family had sat in her conference room in December and cried. Each one used the same sentence in a different arrangement. "Until this clears up." None of them asked her a single question about whether it was true. By 1 o'clock, the operating account was frozen. Payroll ran on Friday. It was Thursday. She called Loretta at 1:20 and got voicemail and did not leave one. At 2 o'clock, the State Bar's Office of Professional Conduct opened a file and assigned a number to it, and the notice came by email, which struck Delphine as unserious for a thing that could end her life. At 2:35, Yvette's badge stopped working on the 22nd floor. It happened in front of everyone. She came back from the copy room, held her lanyard to the reader, and the light stayed red. She tried it again. Red. She looked up, and her face did something Delphine would remember for a long time. Not fear, embarrassment, the specific ordinary shame of a woman locked out of her own workplace with people watching. The letter arrived 11 minutes later. Mirren Group had suspended all outside credentials pending review, and the review had produced one flagged user, badge 4417, Yvette Kerrigan, Senior Legal Assistant, Whitmore and Associates. The log showed badge 4417 opening the financial archive door on the 22nd floor of the Mirren Tower at 11:02 on Tuesday morning and again at 11:06, and showed a document pull logged to that badge at 11:04, and showed the same badge at the archive door at 23 log that night. Delphine read the last line twice. 2300, she said. Yvette was already shaking her head. "I was here. I was at my desk. You were at your desk until when? Until you called me at midnight about the wall chart. I never left this floor." She was pulling her bag onto the desk, hands moving fast, and then she stopped moving entirely and looked up. The notebook. Get it. The spiral notebook came out of the bag with its cover bent back. Yvette flipped through and turned it around and pressed it flat with her palm. Every entry in her own hand. Time, action, machine. 11:02, archive door, per DW. 11:04, pull, signed to DW. 11:06, out. Then a gap. Then the night entries, the ones Delphine had ordered her to write with her own pen, because paper is not edited. 2015. Badge logs raw, my terminal. 2140 same. 2250 same. And at the bottom of the page, in a rounder hand, the hand of a woman getting tired. 23, 0 clock. Still here, still on 22. Coffee gone. 2300. Her own handwriting, in a different building, in a different county. "That's a contradiction," Yvette said. "That's a weapon," Delphine said. Do not let it out of your hands. Do not photograph it. Do not email a page of it to yourself. Delphine, they think I sold your file. They don't think anything. They needed a badge, and yours was the only one that wasn't Korean. She closed the notebook and held it out until Yvette took it back. You're going home. You're going to write down every place you were on Tuesday and who saw you there, and then you're going to stop. I'm not stopping. You're suspended, which means every keystroke you make from now on is a second exhibit. Go home. Yvette took the notebook and stood there in her lanyard that no longer opened anything, and then she took the lanyard off over her head and set it on the desk with more care than it deserved. At 4 o'clock, the court granted Halloran's freeze in part, pending hearing. At 4:30, Kang Tae-jun's office called the firm 4 times. Delphine took none of them. At 4:50, he stopped calling, which she noticed, and which she declined to think about. At 5:15, she sat down alone in the conference room, with the door open, and did the arithmetic she had been avoiding since noon. The disqualification motion would be heard in 6 days. If she fought it, the hearing would require her to explain how a sealed copy left her apartment, which required the coupling, which required the lab, which required Do-yoon, who worked for Miran, whose vendor authorization records had been wiped 20 minutes before she asked for them. Every proof she had ran through the building she was accused of being too close to. If she fought it and lost, the finding would be that she had a conflict and had concealed it. That finding would follow her past this case, past this firm, into every courtroom for the rest of her career. If she withdrew, the motion died. No finding, no record, and Halloran got what he had actually come for, which was her, off the file. She sat with that for 11 minutes. Then she wrote 4 documents, and the order she wrote them in mattered more than any of them. The first was a notice of withdrawal as counsel for Kang Tae-jun, effective immediately, citing the interests of the client. 9 lines. She signed it and did not read it back. The second was a letter to the State Bar disclosing, voluntarily and in full, that Miran Group had in 2009 acquired the assets of Whitmore Freight, that the seller was her mother, that she had learned this on the 4th day of the representation, and that she was reporting it herself. She wrote the word voluntarily. Knowing exactly what it bought her, which was very little, and exactly what it cost Halloran, which was his best paragraph. The third was a preservation demand served on Miran Group as a former client. Every badge log, elevator record, vendor authorization block, tape rotation order, and facilities work order from the last 12 days, held intact, subject to spoliation sanctions. She sent it to Miran's general counsel, Ha Jin-woo, with a copy to the board, which meant Park Min-suk would read it at his desk, with his name nowhere in it, and no reason on paper to feel it. The fourth was 1 line, handwritten, sealed in an envelope, addressed to no one. She gave the envelope to Novak. If I'm disbarred, you open it. Otherwise, you keep it in your car. In my car. Not in this building. At 6:20, she began emptying her office, and she did it herself, because there was nobody left to help who could afford to be seen helping. She took a plain cardboard file box from the supply room and filled it with the things that were hers and not the firm's. The frame with her mother's name spelled wrong on an old freight permit, 3 notebooks, a cheap pen she had used to cross-examine a forensic accountant for 91 minutes. She left the 11 timestamps on the glass. They were still the client's, and the client was not hers anymore, and she was not going to be the last person to touch them. At 7:05, she carried the box past reception. 6 people were still there. Nobody said goodbye first, so she said it, once, to the room, and got it back in pieces. Pell was waiting by the elevator. He had a document in his hand, folded lengthwise, the way men fold things they intend to hand over. Dissolution terms, he said. It's clean. Your name comes off. You keep the 14 files that aren't touched. There are no files that aren't touched. There are 3. Then I keep 3. She shifted the box to her hip and took the paper with her free hand without unfolding it. Arthur, 9 hours. I'm sorry? From the paper hitting the doorstep to you having dissolution terms drafted, she pushed the call button with her knuckle. You didn't write that today. He had the decency to look at the floor. No, I had it drawn in the spring. Why? Because a woman who founds a firm at 26 eventually stops needing a gray head in the room. The elevator opened. I was going to use it when you were winning. It's less ugly this way. It isn't, she said, and stepped in. She got home at 7:52, and the lobby of the Aurelian Tower had 8 people in it, which was 6 more than it had ever had at that hour. The first phone came up before she reached the middle of the floor. A woman by the male alcove, holding it low against her chest at an angle she clearly believed was subtle. Then a man on the leather bench, openly, elbow braced on his knee, tracking her across the marble. Then a couple by the west elevators who stopped talking when they saw the box. She kept the same pace she had used down the courthouse steps on the first morning of all of this. Box on the left hip, watch hand free. That's her, the man on the bench said, not quietly. Daniel Okonkwo Reyes came out from behind the desk fast, tablet still under his arm, and put himself in the line of sight of the woman by the male alcove, without touching her, and without saying anything to her, just standing there, a gray blazer with a brass crest, until she lowered the phone. Ms. Whitmore, let me take that. I've got it. I know you've got it. He walked beside her anyway. West elevators faster. They rode up in silence to 11 floors, and then he said, the board here got a letter this afternoon. About your tenancy. From Counsel for an Entity. It asks whether a resident under criminal inquiry can be removed under the Conduct Clause. There's no criminal inquiry. That's what I wrote back. He watched the floor numbers. I also wrote that the letter came from a company that leases a full floor here, and that I'd need the board to tell me which of our 2 corporate tenants sent it before I could answer properly. Delphine turned her head. You never asked me which 2, Daniel said. You never offered. You didn't ask because you didn't want it in my mouth if somebody deposed me. The doors opened on 41. I've been doing this 19 years, Ms. Whitmore. I know when a lawyer is protecting me. She stepped out into the hallway with the box. 2 doors, hers and his. A strip of light under 41B, and no sound behind it. She stood there longer than she meant to. Then she carried the box into 41A and set it on the counter beside the gray folder, and she poured a glass of water and did not drink it. And at 9:04, the phone rang with a number she didn't know. The voice was a man's, unhurried, American, and it took her 4 seconds to place it because she had only ever heard it in a courtroom at a distance of 30 feet. Counselor, Gregory Halloran said, congratulations on the withdrawal. Very fast, very tidy. She sat down on the arm of the wrapped couch. You're not supposed to be calling me. You're not counsel of record anymore. That's the beautiful thing. Ice moved in a glass somewhere on his end. I'd like to buy you dinner. No, I'd like to buy you immunity. She held the phone away from her ear for a second, then brought it back. You've got a bar file, a frozen account, a partner selling the furniture, and an assistant who's going to be indicted on Monday for the leak, Halloran said. That last part's new. You'll want to sit with it. On what? On a badge log. He let that sit. Or you come in Monday morning and you tell me on the record how Kang Tae-jun's documents came to be in your apartment, and Ms. Kerrigan goes home to her life, and that bar file closes by Friday. Delphine looked at the gray folder on the counter, open where she had left it, the schedule of liabilities from 2009, with her mother's name spelled correctly, by a man who had never shown his face. "Mr. Halloran," she said, "how much did your wife's fund make last year?" The line went quiet for 3 full seconds. Then it clicked, and she was listening to nothing, and somewhere below her the west riser began to knock in the wall. 3 knocks came at 21:19, and they were not the pipe. Delphine set the glass down and crossed to the door. The peephole gave her Taejun in the corridor, arms full, a cardboard carton balanced against his chest, and a courier envelope pinned under his chin. She opened the door 6 inches. "I withdrew," she said. "You have counsel of record, and it isn't me. I know what you filed." He shifted the carton. "This is what you demanded at 8 in the morning. It's 41 hours late." She stepped back. He carried the carton to the counter and set it beside the gray folder and the cardboard box from her office, and the 3 of them sat there in a row like exhibits waiting for a number. He took the envelope from under his chin and put it on top. "Read that one first." It was 9 pages. The first was a statement of position filed that afternoon in federal court by Miran Group, Chairman Kang Tae-jun, signed personally. The chairman does not consent to the withdrawal of Delphine Whitmore, opposes the government's disqualification motion, and waives any conflict arising from the 2009 acquisition of Whitmore Freight, which the chairman affirms occurred without his knowledge and to his lasting shame. She read the last clause twice. "You put shame in a federal filing. My lawyer wasn't available to stop me. They will use this. They will try." He pulled a chair out and sat. "Halloran's motion says nobody can be sure you're clean. My filing says the only man withstanding to object is the man telling the court he objects to you leaving. His motion needs a client who feels betrayed. I took that away from him." She put the pages down flat. "You could have sacrificed me and kept every count off your neck." "Yes, most men would. Then you know what it costs me to be an unusual one." He tipped his head at the carton. "Open it." Inside, the acquisition file. All of it. The standing mandate for distressed logistics, the internal memorandum authorizing the purchase, the closing binder, the assignment 90 days later to the shipping subsidiary. She went to the memorandum first, because the memorandum was the thing she had threatened to subpoena her own client for. It was dated 11 days before the bank called the credit line. She read it standing. She read it a second time, sitting. "Say it out loud," Taejun said. "They authorized the purchase of a company that was solvent." Her thumb stayed on the date. The insolvency was scheduled after the buyer was chosen, not before. "Turn it over." On the reverse, in the authorization block, a code, 6 characters. She had seen that block wiped blank across 11 years of vendor contracts at 1:22 in the morning. "This one survived," she said, "because it's paper, and paper doesn't live on the vendor master." He set a second folder beside it. "The independent lab returned this at 4. The nut carries a service tag. The service tag maps to a work order. The work order carries the same 6 characters." She opened the lab report and found the photograph she had made him take on his knees in her flooded kitchen, the wrench faces bright under a ring light, and beneath it, a chain of custody line with Do-yoon's name and a timestamp of 6:20. "And Daniel," she said. "Ask him yourself. He'll tell you now." The board asked him this afternoon which corporate tenant sent the removal letter, and he answered on the record. Taejun's mouth moved a fraction. "There are 2 full-floor tenants in this building. One of them is me. The other leases through a management company whose signatory has held the office of vice chairman for 19 years. The riser knocked once behind the wall, and neither of them turned toward it. "The unnamed master trades card at 23:02, she said. "Issued in block to that tenant. The block requisition is signed. Same code." She laid the 3 documents in a line on the counter, memorandum, work order, requisition, and put her finger on the 6 characters in each, the same 6, 3 times. and Yvette. Badge 4417 opened the archive door at 2300 on Tuesday under a manual override. Overrides require an authorizing officer. The log shows the officer field. He looked at her. Her notebook says she was in another county eating nothing at 11 o'clock. His code says she was standing in my basement. Delphine sat down, not because her legs failed her, but because the arithmetic was finished, and there was no longer any reason to stand. He flooded my apartment to take 140 pages, she said. He wiped 11 years of vendor authorizations 20 minutes before I asked for them. He borrowed a girl's badge to build a leak. Every one of those needs the same signature key. She looked up, which means every one of them is a confession he had to sign to commit. He never expected anyone to collect them together. He never expected anyone to look at 2009. Taijun stood then and went to the counter and put 2 fingers on the gray folder. "May I?" She let him. He opened it to the schedule of liabilities and turned it so the sheet faced her, and he did not read it because he had already read it, and she watched him not read it. "When?" she said. "You asked me at 1:51 in the morning and I refused. Answer it now." I was 23. He kept his hand flat on the page. My father was not the chairman then. A man named Bakek was his ally and his accountant. Bake was dying, and he was frightened of dying, with certain papers still in a certain office, so he gave them to the youngest person in the building who could read English. 4 boxes, distressed acquisitions, 10 years of them, all authorized out of one office under one standing mandate. You read them. I read every page. I was 23, and I had nothing else to do that year. His hand did not move. 31 companies. Some of them were already dead. Some of them were killed. I could not tell which was which at that age, so I kept them all, and I have kept them for 13 years, and I know the names in that box the way you know a phone number. He turned the folder to face himself. Whitmore Freight. 12 trucks. 31 employees. A warehouse on a street named for a saint. Sole owner. He said it evenly. Loretta Whitmore. Delphine's hand went around the gold watch on her left wrist and stayed there. You knew her name before Minsuk said it. I knew her name for 6 years before Minsuk said it in that boardroom. When he said it, I understood something I had not understood in 6 years. He closed the folder. He did not recommend you because you win. He recommended you because of her. She stood up after all. Say the rest. There are 2 ways this ends for a lawyer who takes my case with your mother in a box in my archive. She discovers it and quits, and the trial is delayed past the speedy trial window, and I take a plea. Or she doesn't quit fast enough, and the government makes her the story, and everything her hands touched dies with her. He met her eyes. He put your name on the agenda 4 times. He wasn't hiring a lawyer. He was loading a weapon and pointing it at the 2 of us at once. And you let him. I let him think it worked. You let me sign. Yes, he didn't soften it. You may bill me for the 4 days, or you may never speak to me again after Monday, and both are just. But you asked when I learned her name, and the answer is 13 years ago, from a dying man, and I have never once used it, and tonight I am giving it to you before anyone can use it against you. He put a last envelope on the counter. She opened it. A voluntary statement, sworn, signed, notarized that afternoon, every fact in his possession regarding Miran Group's acquisition program, including the 4 transactions in which he now believed the acquisition preceded the failure, offered without immunity, without agreement, without condition. This isn't a defense, she said. This is a plea in 11 pages. It is the price of the other thing. What other thing? The thing you're going to do with it in 6 days. She looked at the counter. Gray folder, memorandum, work order, requisition, lab report, sworn statement. 6 objects and 1 code running through them like a wire. She picked up her phone and called Yvette Kerrigan at 2204 and said 4 words, "Bring the notebook, now." Yvette arrived at 23 hours 10 in the gray hoodie with the notebook zipped inside a freezer bag, because Delphine had told her paper was the weapon, and she had decided on her own that weapons should stay dry. Daniel let her up and rode with her, and stayed in the doorway with his tablet under his arm. "The board asked me a question this afternoon," he said. "I answered it in writing. 19 years I've never named a tenant. I named one. They'll try to make that cost you. Then you'll be busy." He handed her the printout. Signed requisition, block of 9 cards, one of them the master trades card that came up here at 23 hours 02. Yvette put the freezer bag on the counter beside the gray folder and did not open it. "They're charging me Monday." They were. Delphine slid the override log toward her and put her finger on the officer field. "Read that." Yvette read it. She read it the way people read their own name on a list they expected to be on for a different reason. Then she took the reading glasses out of her hair and put them on and read it a 3rd time. "He used me because I'm the one nobody would ask about," she said. "He used you because you write things down." Delphine tapped the freezer bag, and that's the part he didn't price. The hearing on the disqualification motion opened at 9 on the 6th day, and Delphine Whitmore walked in wearing royal blue, carrying the oxblood briefcase, with a client who had never fired her, and a paralegal beside her whose badge was dead and whose handwriting was not. Halloran did not stand at first. He was reading his own filing, and he had a legal pad turned face down, and the judge asked whether the government maintained its motion. "We do, Your Honor. Ms. Whitmore." "The defense withdraws nothing and concedes nothing, Your Honor, and before the court reaches the motion, the defense moves to admit 4 exhibits that bear on who created the government's evidence." Halloran objected on relevance. The judge let her lay foundation. She laid it in the order she had decided at a kitchen counter at midnight. First, the elevator log, produced under her own preservation demand, with the unnamed card and the block requisition stapled behind it. Then the work order and the laboratory report on the coupling. Then the manual override on badge 44117 and Yvette Kerrigan sworn, and the spiral notebook admitted in her own hand, 20 Ace 15, 21 hours 40, 22:50, and at the foot of the page, still here, still on 22, coffee gone. Then the 6 characters on a board 3 times, and a 4th. "The 4th is the government's own timeline," Delphine said. 14 of 18 counts are digital signing events. The government's expert reconstructed those event times from a vendor-maintained log. The vendor was retained by, paid by, and authorized under the office of the vice chairman of Miran Group. The reconstruction request carries his authorization code. She let 2 seconds pass. "For 11 months in 2 separate courtrooms, I have been asking one question and being told it is not relevant. Who reconstructed them?" She turned the board. He did, and he signed for it every time. The government asked for a recess and got 20 minutes and used all of it. At 11, she put in the shells. Registered agent in Wilmington, 2 nominee directors employed by 1 trust company, 9 funds, and the limited partnership interest disclosed every year on a federal financial disclosure form, filled out and signed by the lead prosecutor of the case, whose wife's blind trust had cleared $640,000 in 11 months from money the government said was laundered. Halloran stood up for that one. His tie was loose. He said the word outrageous, and then he said nothing else, because the judge had taken the disclosure form and was reading it, and a judge reading is a room with no floor in it. The disqualification motion was denied at 11 hours 40. The freeze on the operating account was vacated at 11 hours 52. At 14 hours, the court referred the reconstruction evidence to the Public Integrity Section and ordered the government to show cause why the 18 counts should not be dismissed. They were dismissed 9 days later, with prejudice as to 14. Gregory Halloran resigned on a Friday in a 2-paragraph letter that used the word family and did not use the word fund. Arthur Pell's dissolution terms were never signed. Delphine bought his name off the door instead and paid for it with the first retainer that came back. Yvette Kerrigan's badge was reissued on a Monday, and she wore the lanyard over a powder pink blouse and put the spiral notebook in the office safe, because Delphine told her that the notebook now belonged to a case file and not to a person. Novak got his envelope back unopened and asked, once, what was in it. One line, she said. It said, he loosened the nut. He kept it anyway. Loretta Whitmore sat in the second row in a navy church dress with a white collar on the day the state entered the corrected filing, and the corrected filing spelled her name the way she had never spelled it, and she made her daughter read that line out loud twice in the hallway afterward. 12 trucks, Loretta said. 31 people. Their letters go out this month. And the man who sent the form? Park Min-suk did not come to any of it. He resigned by email on the morning the show cause order issued, and Do-yoon reached the office 90 minutes later and found a desk drawer that had been emptied with care, and one thing gone from the archive that no one had thought to count. A single file, 40 pages, from shelf row 11, not the acquisitions, not 2009, the other one. The one that had nothing to do with Loretta Whitmore, and everything to do with what Kang Tae-jun had actually done in the years he had been chairman. 3 weeks later, at midnight, Delphine crossed the corridor of the 41st floor, in a burgundy coat belted at the waist, black heels, hair loose, carrying a slim manila file. She knocked. He opened it in 3 seconds, the way he had before, and this time she was dressed, and this time she was the one who came with something in her hands. He offered it to me, she said. Tuesday, through a lawyer from a country that doesn't extradite, 40 pages. He wants immunity papers signed by someone the government still believes. And you took the meeting. I took the file. She held it flat against her coat. I read it on a bench for 2 hours. Tae-jun stood in the doorway with the collar open and did not ask what was in it, because he knew what was in it. The first time I knocked on your door, I needed help. She lifted the file a fraction. This time, Tae-jun, I'm the one holding your salvation and your conviction in my hands. He looked at the file and then at her, and the answer came without a pause, the way a man answers something he settled a long time ago. You were already all 3, he said, from the first meeting. The pipe knocked once in the wall behind him. She stepped inside and closed the door. If you want to watch all the stories without any ads and also get access to bonus scenes, extended epilogues, and exclusive spicy chapters, head over to our Patreon. Scan the QR code on the screen. The link is in the description or in the pinned comment. See you there. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever been handed an opportunity that was really a trap, built by someone smiling across the table from you? Have you ever carried an old folder with your family's name on it, waiting for the day the truth could finally be proven? Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about justice, loyalty, and hidden truths, leave a like. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel.